Religion can't and won't save. Better know God personally. Of all the things we've been taught and told, so many lies still unfold. Find out the truth for yourself.
Torture. If there was a hell, that's something that would happen in hell. And they were bringing you through that on earth. You know, your story reminds me so much of another movie. I hate keep citing movies,
it's
but
fine. I know we get so much reality in these movies. I wish people would realize they show us the truth in movies all the time.
did you ever see the movie A Beautiful Mind about the professor? Well, he became a professor, but the story starts when he's at Princeton University and he has this roommate, and the roommate has a niece. And years later, you find out that he lived alone and he never had a roommate, and he never had a roommate. The roommate he had didn't have a niece. They didn't exist. And he also had a handler. And this guy was really smart and he could crack codes. And he thought that in this world that he would enter, that he had this handler that worked for the government that was using him to crack codes. And he was taking all of these magazines and trying to find codes in the magazines to give to this handler. And he would go to this mansion and put it in the mailbox that had this lock on it, supposedly. Well, come to find out, he lived in a partial reality. This mansion with a mailbox, it existed, but the mansion was run down and nobody lived there. But in his vision, you know, it was a place where people lived, and it was state of the art and beautiful and all that. And he was living in betwixt two worlds.
Yeah.
And it sounds very similar to your story. Like you were saying, you had a place where you would go where there were friends. Like his roommate was his best friend, and he loved that niece. And the way that he figured out later on that they weren't real was his own wife asked him, she says, "How old are they now?" Or maybe the psychiatrist asked him, "How old? Have they aged?" And his roommate and the niece stayed perpetually 9 or 10 years old. She never grew up, and it was 20 years later. And that's when he finally figured out that it wasn't real, you know. And people in the world call that schizophrenia, but
it is real. I know
it's so real. And I know what happens is that the enemy is somehow enabled to show people the spiritual worlds that they can construct. And I know that the one way that this occurs is through the occult and through witchcraft, and also through pharmakeia. That's why a lot of people have visions when they're on mushrooms and LSD and different types of drugs. And those are like demonic door openers. And it's almost like saying the sinner's prayer in reverse. That is, instead of asking Jesus to come into your heart, when people conduct witchcraft, they're asking demons to take over, and they're exposing themselves to being able to see into the spiritual world. And the traumatic abuse you underwent opened up those worlds to you. And also, I believe that God built this into us, this ability for children to almost fragment their minds in order to not experience the trauma perpetually. I think the enemy knows about that, and that's why if you go back and look at CIA documents about MK Ultra, they would trauma bond children to fragment them in order to mind control them and use them as what are they called, Manchurian candidate type stuff. And you know, like we said about your mother, we can't be entirely sure she was doing all this on purpose, although she could have been. But the enemy certainly was. But the enemy certainly was using her to do that. And these worlds that you went into, some people might say, well, she's just schizophrenic. It's all chemical. I don't believe that in the least.
No,
I know for sure.
How is a 5-year-old supposed to be repeatedly seeing gay rape when I didn't even know what a gay person was?
Exactly.
I also didn't know, like, if I did know that at that age, if I knew that a man and a man could be together, I wouldn't know sexually what they do. But yet it continued from there. As I got a bit older, they started showing me the most, just running these sickening things through my mind. They got me to know loads of different characters in loads of different situations. And if if it wasn't real, how come it was very occult circle? It was very like
Right.
witchcraft circles of these handlers and slaves all the time. That's what I was seeing. So, and they showed me so much beating and so much rape and so much gay rape. It was always gay rape. It was never, there weren't very many women in these fantasies because they tried to defeminize me from when I was born.
Right. Well, that's definitely what demons love to do. I mean,
Mm.
the Baphomet is both man and woman. So, wow. I mean, it's just amazing how God's stayed with you that whole time. You were suffering abuse, they had enslaved you, and it's almost like the Hebrews being enslaved in Egypt, and now he's drawing.
That's what I took to my pastor. I said, I've read a part of the Bible now, and I said, I'm so excited that I understand the Hebrews being enslaved in Egypt and then led out of slavery. I said, this happened to me. And this pastor told me, you're thinking too much. The Bible has nothing to do with the world we live in today.
So demonic. And we've never talked about the Hebrews enslaved. And that came to me,
Yeah.
I believe, because of having read the Bible and God's spirit to jibe with your spirit. And I know that God is taking you out of that place of being enslaved. And things like this testimony are going to be amazing because you are not the only one. There are many hundreds of thousands of people that have been through something similar, and your testimony is going to ring true with so many people. And and there's so much more evil that you underwent and undertook.
Yeah,
But
because it continued. This is just the first phase of it. And then they got me convinced through the mind torture. They got me convinced into accepting slavery. Then they got me convinced into accepting BDSM, and not just convinced me, they mind controlled me through torture, so that I spent a large part of my adult life in these BDSM relationships with narcissistic people, which the demonic was sending to my life as handlers to try and kill me. And that happened in much of my adult life. I've only, when people do ask me, did you see this film? Most of the time my answer is no, because I've only had my freedom in this life for 3 years. I've only the person who is aware of who I am and is speaking like this now. It's only been 3 years since I say but God began unfragmenting me from all the different personalities that I was, and the torture and the imprisoned life that Satan had kept me in and put me in, a moldy house, destroying me, handlers trying to kill me, handlers force drugging me, so much.
So they were transitioning that supernatural world to the physical.
Oh yeah,
and they were sending you people that were beating you, sexually abusing you. Everything you had seen in that spiritual world, they transitioned it to the physical world. And you were primed to receive it in the physical world because they had conditioned you in the supernatural.
Yeah, they would torture me if I didn't receive it. They would torture me, and they would torture me through my mind as well. And I'm missing so much out, but if I skip ahead, age 30, I began realizing something's not right, because I couldn't remember what I was thinking 1 hour ago, and I was so many different people. As well as the fact nobody would help me. It was like I had been spiritually cloaked for anybody to help me. Nobody would see me, nobody would help me. The hospitals were demonic, the doctors were demonic, the social services were demonic, the care services that I was in were demonic, the whole world. I started waking up at the age of 30.
The churches rejected you as much as they did, right?
The church wanted to oppress you down and not have you wake up to what the reality of this world is. So yeah, it was just and then I was force drugged, and they were trying to kill me. They really were. They wanted to kill me, or they wanted me in a mental home, like chained to a mental home, not able to leave, and just doped up on drugs, or they wanted to destroy. They wanted to marry me to one of these handlers. They were just trying so hard to kill me. And I didn't know what kind of battle I was in, but God was always in my corner. I was imprisoned so much, and I got ME and fibromyalgia since the age of 21. I've been sick all my life, like physically illness. They tortured me with the illness. They put me through so much pain. They tried to get me to kill myself due to the pain. And a lot of people in these ME and fibromyalgia communities, they do kill themselves because of the pain. As far as I'm concerned, and I know many people will not agree with me and say it's controversial to say, but as far as I am concerned, all of those illnesses, they're all demonic.
Oh,
Any
absolutely. I
illness
agree.
that does not show up in a test is demonic. It's once I started lifting the demonic oppression through Jesus Christ, my pain level started to go down. I've still a long way to go, but I'm 50% better pain wise compared to what I was.
That's without any medication or pills. That's just prayer
Yeah,
and
yeah.
super spiritual warfare.
Yeah, I mean, I have medication, but the only thing that's happened in the medication is I've reduced it massively.
Right.
Yeah,
As you've gone more toward God for healing, you've been able to
yeah,
reduce your
yeah.
medications.
So basically, to just tell a quick version of it, one handler who had been the main handler for 17 years, he force drugged me.
What was he giving you?
He was making me be on hundreds and hundreds of diazepam per month, um, sleeping tablets, and he started forcing me to smoke weed. And it's the weed that put me into hospital, the cannabis. I do not take any drugs, willingly. But and it looked like I was doing a lot of this willingly because a lot of it was through mind control. That if I didn't, I would be tortured. So before this happened, I tried waking myself up because from the age of 30, I noticed something wasn't right, and I started. It was like in the spirit was coming through, God's spirit, and I was trying to um, fight it, and I was trying to just fight for my life, and I was trying to think positive instead of on these constant negative spirals. That they were making me do hours and hours every day. And when I thought positive for, say, 5 minutes, they would torture my mind. They would put me through mental torment, physical pain in my mind. And the moment I said, I can't do this, it's too much, and I'd willingly go back to the demonic, dark, oppressive thought spiral where you just had to sit there and ruminate, people are going to die, and everything bad is going to happen, and you just disgusting, horrible, like a horror movie. I've never watched horror movies. I've seen too many of them in my own mind. And once I started doing that, and like still with the dogs in the cages, only this time it would be my dogs. Now I'm an adult. Now I'm 30 years old. It was my dogs in the cages. Oh my gosh. And they would like drag these scenes out so slowly, and then they would give me the depressive adrenaline drug that they hooked me on from a child. And then, so what I did, and I know that God helped me do this for the next like couple of years. I was fighting against it and putting more and more positivity inside me, and it was agony. It was a battle. I was seeing the battle in the spirit between the good and the dark in my mind, in these worlds. I was seeing the battle in these worlds as well. Everything that was happening in this world at this point was correlating with what was happening on this side, and I was just battling so much.
Did you start reading the Bible at any point?
At this point, it was Jehovah's Witnesses. I agreed to study with them. Yeah, that was age 30 when I was first starting to wake up. They knocked on the door, and it was from the spirit. Something told me, I just knew to invite them in, and from there I started learning about God, because some of their Bible, not all of it, but some of their Bible is, and a lot of it is very close to the Christian Bible.
It still has some truth in it. I mean, it has been an aberration of the scriptures in some ways, but there's enough truth that God could use it to begin to start your deliverance. Yeah.
And it did. It had God, and it told me that God loved me, and it told me that I'm a child of God. And I remember when I first heard this, there was about 5 people studying in my house, and I just broke down in tears because, at the age of 30, that was the first time I genuinely heard that I was loved.
Mm.
So I was just like, it's crazy. Even the Jehovah's Witnesses were telling me to slow down, but I wouldn't. I just started drinking up all this information, just reading as much of it as I could. Um,
You're like a dry sponge. You just
yeah,
you
and I had all these. I mean, I'd been in and out of um lots of relationships with narcissistic men who were I look back now and they were all handlers, because they were all, sent from the spirit, because they were all trying to destroy me, shut me down, and trying to kill me. And I got raped by many of them. Nothing about it was normal. So it was all part of the demonic attack.
So how did Jesus start to begin once you began to have this love affair with God
Okay,
initially by the Jehovah's Witness? How did he begin to manifest himself more and more?
so the main handler, who had been handling me for about 17 years at this point, but no, it was a bit less than that, but he'd been there for many years. He saw, I mean, I was so demonically oppressed. I was so close to death. I I was in so much pain and so much oppression and so much around me that, like, especially my house was just so black with mold that it was all inside me. And I would just get up, feed my dogs, and that was all I could do, and just sit on the floor screaming in pain all day. And in the night, it would be 8 hours screaming, and no exaggeration there, until morning. So
I've
when
had mold sickness. I mean, it will make you feel like you can't even get out, like you're trapped in a web. You
yeah,
can't even like imagine like having the strength to even move your stuff out of the place where the mold
yeah,
has you. It feels like you're stuck in a big vat of goo, like quicksand, and
yeah.
you can't get out.
But also, this handler had he had taken over my finances. He had taken over my whole life. I didn't even know at this point in my life how to switch my PC on or how to tie my shoelaces. The demonic had destroyed me so much. I have no idea how I came back, and that is all through God. I think I when he was drugging me with the weed, I remember I was sat in my bedroom at one point, and I didn't know these were prayers. I was just saying, having conversations which I thought was with myself, and I was saying, I'm dead. I'm dead. There's no more Vicky left. I've died. That is it. Um, and physically, my body is going to die in the next year. And it's strange because it did, because that's when I became born again. I knew something was telling me, this is going to end. You are going to die. It's going to kill you. And it did. It killed me in the spirit. And then a year later, I was born again, as knowing that I was a Christian.
How did you get
So
born again?
it all happened slowly in the spirit. As I started to study with the Jehovah's Witnesses, I studied with them. I was 30, and I studied with them for a few more years. And I was learning more and more. And I was getting stronger. I had an alcohol dependency at this time, which um, the dependency was because it was the only thing that would stop the pain. But I got off that dependency, and the handler that was around me made sure that he traumatized me so much. He put me back on it, and I started to notice, because I was waking up to see what was happening around me, age 30, and even though I was still very fragmented, um, I was realizing more. I was realizing that the more I studied with these Jehovah's Witnesses, and the more I was, only at this point a little bit, but it was huge to me at the time, was strengthening up through God and God's word. Um, the handler was going mental at it, and he started, every time he came to my house, the things, it could only be demonic. He would be screaming and shouting about God, but mostly attacking Jesus, not God. um he would make so many disgusting references to Jesus. I mean, he would go so graphic that as the traumatized person I was, this would really put me in tears. It was like I was just saying, okay, that's your opinion, but you know, it's not my opinion. I'm going to continue studying. And he'd start screaming, you're not a Christian, you're not a Christian, this is nothing to do with you, and attacking so much. So I more started waking up and realizing all this darkness. I didn't know everything at this point, but I saw that there was the darkness was attacking the Christianity that I was trying to learn.
It hated Jesus, the name of Jesus. Like when your
Oh,
mom bristled at
yeah.
the name and the prayer and the Bible reading, it's the same with this guy.
Yeah, and this was just, it would scream at me for hours just over his hatred for Jesus.
Gosh, it was just
So
more of your childhood resurrected
yeah,
through this
yeah.
man.
And then he drugged me, and it went wrong, and I went to hospital.
What was the drug that went wrong?
It was just cannabis, but I'm a very sensitive person. I don't take any drugs, and it went really wrong. It caused a lot of pain.
These days, a lot of people get cannabis that's laced with something.
Yeah, I think it was because it started crushing my skull, to a level of pain you couldn't even imagine, and took my eyesight by 80% and my hearing. And I phoned this handler because I thought he was my friend. He'd just previously been screaming at me down the phone that I had to smoke it. And to the people, if anyone thinks, well, you didn't have to do it, well, they've not experienced mind control. Years and years of mind control where you are tortured if you don't do what you're told. And any avenue out of this has all been cut off. There is no way out. You can't move. They've got your money. You can't get well. They're forcing you to live in a house that's black with mold, and they're screaming at you, and they've destroyed your adrenal. They've destroyed all your body from the abuse that they've done to you. That's just never ever let up from when you were born. So he ran. When I phoned him about I'm going to hospital, and he screamed abuse down at the phone at me for 20 minutes, telling me just to go to bed. And many times in the past I'd overdosed, and he'd on tablets just trying to end my life. And he'd never ever allow me to call an ambulance. He'd just force me to go to bed. So if I died, he would have made out he'd just found me. He was trying to kill me all the time. One of the medications that he brought to me, and he just before I escaped, I mean, God got me out at the very moment that I needed, because if I hadn't have got out at that moment, he would have killed me, because he brought medication to my house for me to take. And after the cannabis incident went wrong, and I ignored him screaming at me because the pain overrode what he was saying, so I went to hospital. And
how did you get there?
Ambulance. I went to hospital by ambulance. I phoned them, and I told at the hospital, you know, my life's controlled. I was forced to take this drug, but the demon spirit in the hospital, many doctors heard what I was saying, and
Well, it
you know,
wouldn't listen.
they act like it's not happening. So you know, I can't go into how I got back from the hospital because it's too traumatic. But after that, I realized, after that incident, I woke up even more to the fact that this handler was trying to kill me. And I went and lived with his alcoholic cousin for 1 year to able to escape him. But the alcoholic cousin was in the same family, oppressed by the same demonic spirit who made my life pure hell. I was locked in a house for a year.
So frying pan to the fire there.
Yeah, but I had to go through that to get out. All through this, I'm still studying with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Did
When I
none of
get
them offer to find you a place to live or to help you escape, or did they not even know your backstory?
they didn't know all of it because I didn't know. I hadn't fully woken up. They just knew I was somebody in abusive relationships who was struggling, and they viewed it as sort of normal for a person to be struggling in this life like that, for the people that are. So I basically lived in a bed. This house, I was too disabled to get out and go anywhere. So this person, he had a car, but he just tormented me. He stole all my money and drinking. So again, no money, couldn't escape, couldn't, go rent another place. I was just stuck there. So I basically lived in bed for 1 year with my illness, and the seizures that I'd been having all my life with the illness, which I now know were demon manifestations, they were happening all the time around this person when he was drinking. He would scream at me. He would get me in a corner and scream at me relentlessly until I fell to the floor and started seizuring. They were trying to bring the demon manifestation through me as much as possible. So what happened? I had to lay in bed for a year. The house, there was nothing in the house. There was no way of making the house a house. Again, it was another house that was black.
How did you eat and feed yourself? You just kind of crawl into the kitchen and get a little bite?
Yeah, I mean, I did have, they weren't very helpful. I had these people that were called carers, a couple of hours a week, so it wasn't much. And I would just, in my pajamas and, my hair that had not been washed in months, myself that had not been washed in months, I would just drag myself to their car to get to the shop to get, some basic shopping, not really any cooking or anything, like cornflakes, bread or whatever, and just that's what I'd eat. And the only thing again then that I was doing was feeding my dogs. This person had promised before we did move in. Obviously, he made all the narcissistic promises. Yeah, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you get out of this situation. We'll go get this house. It had no garden, and I didn't have the strength to walk my dogs. As soon as we'd moved in, I found out that he was an alcoholic. He refused to walk the dogs. The dogs went to the toilet all over the house, and there was nothing I could do about it. I mean, by the end of it, there was maggots all crawling through this house, something like out of a horror movie. The walls were, again, just all mold everywhere.
So that supernatural world coming to life yet again.
Oh, definitely. Mold is demonic. Mold is demonic. And if it gets you in it and it gets you oppressed, it will not. That's why the cheap housing all has mold in it, because if it oppresses you down to that level, you can't get out of the mold. The mold gets into your body, and then the mold interacts with the demonic, and they work in conjunction with each other in the same way that a narcissist works in conjunction with the trauma control, which will destroy your adrenal system. Once your adrenal system has collapsed, your body starts collapsing, and then all the demonic can start coming in.
People don't realize that the adrenal system informs the rest of the body, especially when it comes to like your immune system. So a lot of people that have immune system issues, which mold attacks, because their adrenals are so shot through the stress of life and of these outside influences like what you had, that you can try to fix the immune system all you want, but if you don't address the adrenal system first, the immune system won't react to whatever positive thing you're doing for it. So you have to, there are just natural herbs that will help heal an adrenal system, that will make it so. I remember when my adrenal system was shot, that even the slightest thing that would create like that butterfly feeling in your heart area, things that should have never gotten me to that level would easily get me, my body saying fight or flight, and I would have that feeling. And so, of course, it was prayer and deliverance. That's number one. But God did make a lot of plants for our healing, and there are special herbs that will help to restore normalcy to your adrenal system. And I started taking an adrenal support supplement, just herbs, nothing pharmakeia about it. And slowly but surely, when my adrenal system got better, then my immune system, which was highly reactive to any chemicals, any smells. I couldn't even walk down the aisle of like a grocery store that had scented laundry detergents and whatnot without having a complete reaction. I'd break out in hives. It was horrible, like a eczema, psoriasis type stuff. But once I did resolve the adrenal thing, like you keep referring to, then my immune system could get better and I could strengthen, and then I could detox from the mold. Mold is a huge issue that a lot of people have mold in their homes and they don't even realize it. And like you say, these older homes and places that they might put you in that are subsidized by the government, and they're not looking after what's in the air conditioning ducts and everything, and you're just breathing in mold. And black mold will kill you deader than a hammer, and it will send you into just a physical downward spiral that's a lot like mono, where you're like you were saying, you're just living in a pajamas all day. You can barely move. Like I remember when I was living in this older house before I knew it had mold, and I was describing my symptoms, talking to a person that knew about herbs and plants as a remedy. She was a Southern person. She was so funny. She goes, Doug, you got mold. And I was like, mold? What are you talking about? She says, you sound just like you got mold. I bet you there's mold in that house you live in. And so what I did was I went back and I looked in one day, the master bedroom. I could not sleep in it. I always slept in the living room. But I went back and I looked in the closets of the master bedroom. I had 2 small closets. It was an older home. Mold was coming through the walls, through the drywall of both of those closets. Yeah. And right then I knew she was right. And I found out later it cost them well over $10,000 in remediation of mold for that home. So you guys, I just told that whole story and it was sort of long-winded, but I told the whole story to tell people there is a solution. Like if you take oil of oregano, that will kill. It's antimicrobial, it's antibacterial, it's antifungal. It'll kill mold deader than a hammer. If you take it and you need to take a binder like Berber Detox is like something that will bind to the mold and draw it out of your system. So there are methodologies for getting rid of mold from your body, that in the physical as well as the spiritual, that you can do. And it takes time. You need to sweat a lot. If you've got to go to a sauna to get it out, or, if you live in a hot part of the world, go outside on long walks or jogs and try to sweat a lot. It'll come out that way. But all I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to reaffirm what Vicki's experience with mold and how damaging it is. I mean, it hurt my life in a major way. And I think the enemy uses it just to add insult to injury, because if you are physically unable to do anything and you have mono-like symptoms where you can't literally like move, like you've got like an hour's worth of energy for a 24-hour day tops when you're mold sick, you feel literally like you just can't even get out of bed. And I'm not trying to brag when I say this, but I've been athletic my whole life. I'm used to exerting 5, 6, 7 hours as a tennis coach on the court of energy. It never was about fitness. And you can see from Vicki, she's a thin person. She's not carrying around a whole bunch of weight. She's, someone like her should have energy and to spare in her day. And I'm just coming in. I don't know why I'm talking so much about the mold, but you need to understand if you've got mold in your house that you need to get out. And I will put up a scripture right now where God literally tells the people to burn homes down that have black mold in the Old Testament. It's that serious. And, talked about leprosy in the walls and black mold in the walls in the Bible. So you want to definitely take heed to that and do whatever you can to either rectify it in the place where you're living or to move out, because that's a big way physically damaging you to where you don't even have the energy to pray and to do spiritual warfare. Is a huge way the enemy traps you in. So
can I just say, and a lot of people know this, you can't paint over the mold. If you can't see it, it's not got rid of it. It's still
no. And bleach doesn't kill mold. The only thing I know that kills mold is a vinegar will kill mold. So if you add a little vinegar, your clothes are going to have mold all in them. And the direct contact with your skin is your biggest filter. That's terrible for your skin. And so one thing to do is to wash your clothing with, like a half cup, quarter cup to half cup. Just pour that white vinegar. It doesn't have to be the Bragg's and all that. You just want white vinegar. It can kill mold deader than a hammer. And that, once I got out of my clothes, that was huge. That's a big first step. And Vicki's totally right. You can't paint over it. Bleach doesn't work. There's other natural things that will kill But if it's overtaken your house and it's literally growing inside of your drywall, you're never going to get it out. That drywall has to be cut out and removed. And whatever is in your house that has mold in it, like your ducts, they could go in and clean those ducts, but I would just replace the ducts. All this stuff is super expensive. Remediation of mold is really expensive. But if you're just renting and you can go rent somewhere else,
And get
I
out.
mean, I got my full deposit back when I left, and I could have sued those people, obviously, because they nearly destroyed my career. I could not coach tennis. I couldn't be out in the sun. If you get mold in your skin, you will have allergic reactions to the sun. And, thankfully I worked at an indoor club where I could teach inside mostly, but I mean, it almost destroyed my life. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you really need to get away from it. And if it can't be remediated
At any expense whatsoever, it's not worth it.
it's so true. It's so true. Even if they don't give you your deposit back, even if you have to pay another deposit, you've got to get away from it, because you will be trapped in this world like Vicki describes. Like it was literally like I had a friend come over and I was just sitting there on my bed exactly like she is, and he looked at me, he says, "Doug, you just look awful. You look like hell, literally." And and I was itchy, scratchy. It was terrible. And praise the Lord, he led me out of it. He showed me how to get it out of my body naturally. Of course, I was doing spiritual warfare the whole time, and you need to do both. But you don't need to go. The number one thing I would say is you don't need to do is go to a doctor and have him prescribe prednisone for you, because the prednisone is going to shut down your immune system, and then you're not going to react to the mold. But the mold's not gone.
Yeah.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a giant 10-inch wound. It's not going to help. You have to get the mold out of your system. And that's why this westernized medicine, which is just little patches that don't resolve, and then they have huge side effects. Prednisone is mind altering. It'll make you very angry. I remember I was almost going into road rages almost every day. You don't need to be on prednisone. It's a steroid. You need to there's lots of anti-inflammatories, like turmeric is a huge anti-inflammatory. CBD oil has no TCH in it, which doesn't make you high. It comes from a cannabis plant, but you could take CBD as a huge anti-inflammatory. It helped me a lot. It saved my dog's life. But you definitely want to stay away from TCH and marijuana. CBD comes from a completely different strain of the cannabis plant that doesn't have what makes you high in it. So there are other ways to resolve that. Through turmeric. If you don't want to do CBD, try turmeric. There's lots of anti-inflammatories that can help your body that are natural. And by the way, I don't want to say I'm an expert on all this. I talked with a lot of people that knew more than me, but I know what worked for me.
Yeah.
And that's the things I'm trying to hone in on, what helped me. But how did you escape that house? How did Jesus find you? How did you start down the road to casting demons out?
So I'm getting stronger at this point. I don't really know what's going on. I'm living with the alcoholic, the demon oppressed alcoholic, and that is such an oppressive situation. I can physically feel it on my chest, crushing me constantly. It wasn't really so much panic attacks. It was because the seizures that I were getting were a very evolved form of panic attack, where the demonic was actually coming through me. So this was just like the shutting down with the adrenaline and everything else. It was then they were just like stamping on me constantly, just so much pressure all around me. But at the same time, I'd gotten away from the 17-year-old, the 17-year narcissistic handler. So I was starting to wake up. I was starting to wake up more, and
so the new handler had less control over you.
Yes, and it infuriated him, and at the same time I could see that. Now, prior to this, prior to living with the new handler, I had gotten into such a demonically oppressed state that my talking, I would just ramble, because the way that I see it in a vision is like I was at the bottom of, I'd fallen down, like I'm in this glass or this pit. I'd fallen down, and I was frantically trying to get out, trying to understand what was going on and how to get out. And the way that I was doing that was through verbal. So I never stopped speaking. I was frantic, rambling. I couldn't listen to anybody. I was just speaking and speaking. I looked like somebody who was very, very mentally ill, but I wasn't. I was abused and demon oppressed. So when I got to living with this alcoholic person, I was able, a lot of the demonic oppression started to lift at this point, because that handler and what he had done to me over 17 years, which had been building and building and building, a lot of that had started to break. And I was still studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses all the time. So I started realizing, and I started slowing my speaking down. No, we're speaking fast here because we only have an hour, but I was slowing my speaking down, and as I did that, I was realizing a lot of things. One thing I hadn't mentioned is a 17-year-old handler, 17-year-long handler had put me into internet modeling. It wasn't prostitution, but it was naked pictures, and that had been a big part of my life that I was groomed into from the age of 17 by this handler. So I'm now living with the alcoholic, and I'm reading the I'm reading the Jehovah's Witness Bible, and I just open it on one page, and I can't remember the scripture, but it was something. I just opened it one day, like, okay, God, show me something, and He showed something like, I can't remember what scripture it was. It was so long ago, but it was something like, you can't run around like Jezebel. You have to have respect for yourself, and that means like sexual respect for yourself.
Religion can't and won't save. Better know God personally. Of all the things we've been taught and told, so many lies still unfold. Find out the truth for yourself. Don't put your trust in anyone else. A script of lies must be burned. Every deception so unlearned. I say, every deception so